My name is Justin Jeruthi-Warbong, and the topic I chose to focus on was the usage of holistic review in college admissions processes, more specifically to what extent it's still needed in admissions today. So I began the researching process wanting to tackle the issue of affirmative action. As an Asian American, I'm well aware of the narratives concerning how affirmative action is screwing over individuals like me in college admissions processes, but admittedly I wasn't too well versed in the topic. My personal stake in the issue felt like a natural reason to pursue it for a project like this. I was later inspired by Edward Kessler's piece, Social Media and the Movement of Ideas, and his examination of the internet as an agent of change that can serve as a harbinger for both equally positive and negative causes. And I wanted to see if whether or not this same idea applied to the concept of affirmative action, and if my negative perception of it was only based off a grave misuse of it. I later shifted my focus to examining holistic review to incorporate a socioeconomic lens. Before I define what holistic review is, I'd like to first contextualize its use. College admissions programs have always had a track record of being corrupted. Take, for example, the policies Harvard had in 1892. Applicants were expected to have an elementary working knowledge of Latin and Greek, French and German, English classical literature, and other criteria that basically protected their homogenous class of wealthy white men and shut out those who couldn't afford to attend prestigious prep schools. Here's where the concept of holistic review comes into play. Holistic review is the concept of considering a myriad of factors when concerning one's application. Such factors include, but are not limited to, what are pictured up here. Holistic review is meant to combat examples of corruption like the Harvard criteria in 1892 and allow for a fair and equal chance for all individuals applying while also promoting the diversity of the student body. My argument is that socioeconomic manipulation and racial biases present in college admissions illustrate how the implementation and the principles of the holistic review is needed now more than ever for the prosperity of a diverse collegiate student body. The most obvious example of preferential socioeconomic treatment would be the concept of legacy admissions, which is defined as the preference given to applicants on the basis of their familial relationship to alumni. While in theory this idea doesn't sound inherently biased, most alumni families are white and rich due to because of historical inequities in education. What's also alarming is the significant boost that legacy children receive. For example, at Vanderbilt, legacy applicants received a 29.8% admissions rate compared to the standard 25.3%. This process provides another advantage for those already privileged. A more egregious example of this bias would be the concept of development cases, which is defined as the children of important donors or potential donors who receive an even greater advantage than legacies. Again, while shady, this policy isn't entirely corrupt until one considers that applicants deemed to be development cases have been found to be given a 400 to 500 point cushion on the SAT, and that 4 to 5% of Dartmouth's incoming freshman class were development cases, which translates to about 100 to 125 more qualified admissions that could have been ignored. One notable example of this system would be Jared Kushner, the son-in-law and senior advisor to President Trump and the son of real estate tycoon Charles Kushner. Despite testimonies from those who attended high school with him as not being qualified enough, Jared was able to attend Harvard on the heels of his father's $2.3 million donation. The preferential treatment of affluent applicants could potentially also result in a more racially skewed student body. In a 2015 study conducted by the organization Child Trends, a research company focused on what their name suggests, it was found that African American and Hispanic children were likely to be of lower socioeconomic status than Asians and white Americans. The socioeconomic bias ruins the prospect of a diverse collegiate student body. Races of lower socioeconomic status are not only unable to buy themselves into college, but they also cannot afford the same academic privileges like private tutors or prestigious prep schools and are left with an uneven playing field. This exemplifies why holistic review is needed. Its consideration of racial and socioeconomic circumstance allow for an equal opportunity for college for all. However, in practice, holistic review has been much more flawed. For the second perspective of my research process, I decided to examine the existing examples of holistic review and the racial bias that the system seems to create. Critics of holistic review have deemed it to be counterintuitive. Even though it solves one issue of discrimination, they say it puts even more stress on another topic of contention, the race of an applicant. Individuals and groups are starting to notice how the consideration of race in holistic review is enabling colleges to establish racial quotas in order to artificially create a diverse student body. The most popular example of this would be the lawsuit against Harvard at the hands of the organization Students for Fair Admissions, SFFA. The SFFA's claim to fame was that Harvard's use of holistic review and desire to pursue a diverse student body caused them to discriminate against Asian Americans. The movement is especially partial to a 2013 investigation conducted by Harvard itself of its admittance rates that showed how Asians consistently made up a larger portion of the student body with the consideration of all factors besides race. Another example of Harvard seemingly manipulating holistic review to fuel their agenda of diversity was their consistently low scoring of Asians on their personality rating. It's fair to say that this scoring costed several Asian applicants, as an examination of 160,000 applicants showed that they also consistently boasted higher test scores, better grades, and stronger extracurriculars than other races. While it seems like right now all I'm doing is destroying the argument that I had previously established, I beg the audience to take a second look at the 2013 internal investigation that I referenced earlier. I'd like to point out this specific statistic, the fact that white Americans actually benefit from the factoring in race, as you can see right here. So if the true problem lied within Harvard's use of holistic review and in their pursuit of a diverse student college body, wouldn't it be fair to assume that white Americans would lose out drastically in the consideration of race? This brings me to the point that the true problem in this scenario is not with the actual usage of holistic review, but rather the inherent biases fueling it. It's important to not confuse the potential inherent biases of one institution with the system that historically and currently allows for otherwise underrepresented racial groups like African Americans and Latinos to shine in the admissions process. So, in conclusion, the socioeconomic skewing of admissions processes emphasize the necessity of the holistic review, while the racial bias exhibited by Harvard in their admissions prove that the practice of the process can still be improved. So how can we fix holistic review and inherent biases, one might ask? The answer lies in the diversity of admissions offices. I strongly believe that in order to create a fair implementation of holistic review, admissions offices and staff should reflect the diversity of the student body they wish to create. It's altruistic to assume that inherent biases are going to be overcome on one's own accord, but I feel as if the presence of diverse backgrounds and judgments decreases the risk of that bias taking over the admissions process. Another thing to point out is that time is key, and that the phrase practice makes perfect applies very well to this situation. I feel as if the longer that colleges are used to using such a process like holistic review, the stronger and more fair they will get with it. Thanks for listening.
What evidence did you gather that you didn't use in your presentation? Why did you decide not to use it?
Well, one really unique example that I found was there's this CNN video about an Indian American who posed being black to get into college. He was taking out, his whole point was that he was taking advantage of affirmative action, and that the race, he was like, the whole point was that he wouldn't have made it into as many med schools as he would have if he had been an Indian American, because he declared himself black. His lower grades were, I guess he was able to take advantage of the process and able to get into schools that he was not qualified for. The reason why I didn't include it was because I think it was such a one-off example, and also I feel like it wasn't really in the scope of my question at all either, because I was focusing on college, not med school, so I don't know if there's probably like different standards there. I think it would have been interesting to maybe incorporate it into my counter a little bit, but overall I don't think it would fit into the scope of my essay.
And what advice would you have for other researchers and writers who consider this topic?
Some advice I'd give them is just expand on my conclusion, or on the conclusion a little bit, because unfortunately I didn't have enough time to explore my conclusion process is more diverse. So I don't really know, like the conclusions that I made from it were kind of like just assumptions that I made. So I think if you can find real evidence grounded in that, or if you could, or maybe not in that specific solution, but in like how colleges are responding to this problem, I think you would have a more fleshed out argument. So.
Very nice. Thank you, Justin.